I thought babysitting would be easy, until this job revealed a family secret that made me question everything I thought I knew about the people I trusted. Mrs. Chen called me on a Thursday afternoon, her voice trembling with desperation. "Madison, I need someone to watch Sophie this weekend. It's an emergency. My mother's in the hospital, and I have to fly to Portland immediately. I'll pay you $800 for 4 days." $800 for watching one kid? The amount should have been my first red flag. But as a 19-year-old community college student working 3 part-time jobs to afford rent, that money felt like winning the lottery. "Absolutely," I replied without hesitation. "When do you need me there?" My name is Madison, and I'd been babysitting since I was 15. I had references from 12 families, glowing reviews online, and a clean background check. Kids adored me, parents recommended me to their friends, and I'd never encountered anything worse than a temper tantrum or a scraped knee. The Chen family lived in Riverside Heights, the wealthy neighborhood where all the houses had circular driveways and 3-car garages. I'd babysat for several families there, but never for the Chens. Mrs. Chen had gotten my number from the Johnsons next door, who raved about how responsible and trustworthy I was. When I arrived at the Chen house Friday evening, Mrs. Chen was already loading suitcases into her BMW. She looked frazzled, her usually perfect hair pulled into a messy bun. "Madison, thank God you're here. My flight leaves in 2 hours, and I still need to—" "Don't worry," I interrupted, shouldering my overnight bag. "Just tell me Sophie's routine, and I'll handle everything else." Mrs. Chen handed me a typed list of instructions that was 3 pages long. Sophie's bedtime routine, her favorite foods, emergency contacts, and specific rules about screen time and activities. At the bottom, written in red ink, was a note that made my stomach flutter with unease. Under no circumstances should Sophie go in the basement. The door should remain locked at all times. I looked up at Mrs. Chen, who was checking her phone anxiously. "Why can't she go in the basement?" "It's just, there's construction equipment down there. Sharp tools, exposed wiring. It's not safe for children." She grabbed her purse and keys. "Sophie knows the rule. She won't even try to go down there." That should have been red flag number 2, but Mrs. Chen was rushing around so frantically that I didn't have time to ask more questions. She kissed 7-year-old Sophie goodbye, reminded me that my payment was in an envelope on the kitchen counter, and drove off into the night. Sophie was a sweet kid with dark pigtails and a gap-toothed smile. She helped me carry my bags upstairs to the guest room and gave me a tour of the house. The Chen home was gorgeous. Marble countertops, hardwood floors, and windows that overlooked a perfectly manicured backyard. "That's the basement door," Sophie said matter-of-factly, pointing to a heavy wooden door near the kitchen that had 2 deadbolt locks. "I'm not allowed to go down there ever. "Why not?" I asked, kneeling down to her level. Sophie shrugged. "Mommy says there's dangerous stuff. But sometimes I hear noises." My skin prickled. "What kind of noises?" "Like walking. Or maybe the TV is on." She lowered her voice to a whisper. "Sometimes I hear someone crying, but Mommy says it's just the pipes." I felt a chill run down my spine but forced myself to smile. "Well, your mom knows best. Want to help me make dinner?" That first night passed without incident. Sophie and I made mac and cheese, watched Finding Nemo, and she went to bed at 8:30 without any fuss. I settled into the living room with my textbooks, planning to catch up on homework while earning the easiest $800 of my life. Around midnight, I heard it. A soft thudding sound coming from below the kitchen. I muted the TV and listened carefully. The sound came again. Definitely footsteps, slow and deliberate. My heart started racing as I remembered Sophie's words about hearing walking sounds from the basement. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and approached the basement door. The deadbolts were still locked, exactly as Mrs. Chen had left them. I pressed my ear against the wood and heard nothing, just the house settling and my own imagination running wild. But as I turned to go back to the living room, I heard something that made my blood freeze. A voice, muffled but distinctly human, calling out, "Help, please." I fumbled for my phone, ready to call 911, when I remembered Mrs. Chen's explanation about old pipes. Old houses made weird noises. The sound could have been anything: the water heater, the furnace, wind in the vents. I was just spooked because Sophie had planted the idea in my head. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, jumping at every creak and groan. When Sophie bounced down the stairs Saturday morning, she found me surrounded by empty coffee cups and textbooks I'd been too distracted to actually read. "Did you hear the noises last night?" she asked, climbing onto the couch beside me. I tried to keep my voice casual. "What noises?" "From the basement. The walking and the crying. It was louder than usual. My hands started shaking. Sophie, has your mom ever told you why those sounds happen? She nodded seriously. She says it's because our house is really old and old houses talk to themselves. But she looked around to make sure we were alone, then whispered, I think someone lives down there. Saturday afternoon, while Sophie napped, I called Mrs. Chen's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I tried twice more with the same result. The emergency contact list included her husband, but according to Mrs. Chen, he was overseas on a business trip and wouldn't be reachable. That evening, Sophie and I were making pizza when the sounds started again. This time, they were unmistakable, footsteps pacing back and forth, followed by what sounded like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Sophie stopped spreading sauce and looked at me with wide eyes. See, I told you someone's down there. I knelt beside her, my heart pounding. Sophie, I need you to tell me the truth. Has your mom ever taken you into the basement? She shook her head. Never. But one time, when she thought I was sleeping, I saw her go down there with a bag of food. She stayed for a long time. The pieces were starting to form a horrifying picture in my mind. The overpayment for a simple babysitting job. The locked basement door. The sounds of movement and crying. Mrs. Chen's nervous behavior and quick departure. Sophie, I said carefully, do you know if your mom or dad has any friends or family staying with you? No, she said. It's just me and mommy and daddy. But daddy's been gone for a really long time. Like months and months. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Stop asking questions. Take care of Sophie and mind your own business. You're being paid well to keep quiet. My hands trembled as I showed Sophie the message. Did your mom give anyone else my phone number? Sophie studied the screen and shrugged. I don't know. Maybe whoever lives in the basement. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about true crime documentaries I'd watched about people being held captive in basements. About families who seemed perfect on the surface but hid terrible secrets. About the text message warning me to keep quiet. Around 3 in the morning, I heard the sounds again. But this time, I also heard Mrs. Chen's voice, though she was supposed to be in Portland. She was speaking in hushed tones, and I could make out fragments. Won't be much longer. Babysitter doesn't suspect. Dispose of everything. I crept to the top of the basement stairs, my heart hammering so hard I was sure everyone in the house could hear it. Through the crack under the door, I could see a faint light flickering. Mrs. Chen was definitely in the house. She'd never left for Portland. But why would she lie about that? And who was in the basement? I spent the next hour sitting on my bed, staring at my phone. Should I call the police? What would I tell them? That I heard noises and voices? That a 7-year-old thought someone lived in the basement? They'd think I was crazy. But if someone was being held against their will down there, I couldn't just ignore it. Sunday morning, Sophie came to my room earlier than usual. Her face was pale, and she was clutching her stuffed rabbit. Madison, I'm scared, she whispered. I heard Mommy talking to someone last night, but she's supposed to be with Grandma. I pulled her onto the bed beside me. What did you hear? She was saying mean things. About how the person in the basement was causing too much trouble and needed to be quiet forever. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. What does that mean? Before I could answer, we both heard the front door open and close. Footsteps crossed the hardwood floor below us, followed by the sound of deadbolts being unlocked. Sophie, I whispered urgently, I need you to hide in the closet and be very, very quiet. Don't come out until I tell you to, okay? She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, and crawled into the walk-in closet. I closed the door behind her and crept to the bedroom window that overlooked the driveway. Mrs. Chen's BMW was parked outside, even though she was supposed to be in another state. As I watched, she emerged from the house carrying what looked like a large duffel bag. She opened her trunk and loaded it inside, then went back into the house. My phone rang, making me jump. It was Mrs. Chen's number. Madison, how is everything going with Sophie? Fine, I managed to say, though my voice was shaking. She's been great. Wonderful. I'm still in Portland with my mother, but I wanted to check in. Has Sophie been asking any questions about anything unusual? No, nothing unusual. Good. Remember, the basement door should stay locked. There's really dangerous equipment down there that could seriously hurt someone. After she hung up, I sat there trying to process what was happening. Mrs. Chen was clearly in the house, but she just called claiming to be in Portland. She was lying about her whereabouts and had someone, or something, locked in her basement. I made a decision that would change everything. I waited until I heard Mrs. Chen leave the house again, then crept downstairs to the kitchen. The basement keys were hanging on a hook beside the refrigerator, exactly where I'd seen Mrs. Chen grab them the night before. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the lock. The first deadbolt turned with a click that seemed to echo through the house. The second lock stuck, and I had to wiggle it for nearly a minute before it finally gave way. I pushed the door open and peered down the wooden stairs. The basement was dark except for a single bulb hanging from the ceiling about halfway down. The smell that wafted up was awful, a mixture of unwashed bodies, fear, and something else I didn't want to identify. "Hello," I called softly. "Is someone down there?" A weak voice answered from the darkness. "Please, help me." I grabbed the flashlight and made my way down the creaky stairs, every step feeling like it might be my last. At the bottom, I swept the flashlight beam across the basement and nearly dropped it. In the far corner, chained to a support beam, was a man who looked to be in his 30s. He was thin, dirty, and his clothes were torn. When the light hit his face, he squinted and raised his hand to shield his eyes. Are you Mr. Chen?" I whispered. He nodded weakly. "David Chen. Please, you have to help me. My wife, she's been keeping me down here for months. She told everyone I'm traveling for work, but I'm a prisoner in my own house." My mind reeled as I took in the scene. There was a mattress on the floor, empty food containers, and a bucket in the corner that I didn't want to think about. This man, Sophie's father, had been living in these horrible conditions while his wife collected his paychecks and maintained the lie that he was away on business. "Why?" I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "I found out she was having an affair. When I confronted her, she dr***ed me and chained me up. She's been slowly poisoning me, making me weaker so I can't escape. She told me she's going to stage my death, make it look like an accident during my fake business trip." I fumbled for my phone to call 911, but David grabbed my arm. "Wait," he gasped. "She has cameras down here. She'll know you found me. You have to get Sophie away from here first. My wife, she's not stable. If she thinks you're going to expose her, she might hurt Sophie to keep her quiet." As if summoned by his words, we heard footsteps on the floor above us. Mrs. Chen had returned. "Go," David whispered urgently. "Lock the door behind you. Pretend nothing happened. Wait until she leaves again, then call the police." I raced up the stairs, locked both deadbolts, and hung the keys back on their hook just as Mrs. Chen entered the kitchen. She was carrying another bag of groceries, but her eyes immediately went to my flushed face and trembling hands. "Madison, is everything all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired. Sophie's still sleeping." She studied my face for a moment longer than was comfortable, then smiled. "Well, I should be back from Portland tomorrow evening. Just one more day to go." After she went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table trying to figure out what to do. Sophie's father was chained in the basement, being slowly poisoned by his own wife. Sophie had no idea her mother was a monster who was planning to murder her father and frame it as an accident. And I was trapped in the middle of it all, responsible for keeping a 7-year-old safe while her mother committed unspeakable crimes just feet below where we slept. I retrieved Sophie from the closet and tried to act normal, but my hands shook as I made her lunch and my voice cracked when I read her stories. She kept asking if I was okay, and I kept lying, telling her I was just tired. That afternoon, while Sophie watched cartoons, I texted my best friend Jenna, "If something happens to me, tell police to check the basement at 1247 Elmwood Drive in Riverside Heights." She immediately called me back. "Madison, what the hell are you talking about? Are you in danger?" "I can't explain right now," I whispered, "but promise me you'll remember that address." "I'm calling the police right now." "No, not yet. There's a little girl involved, and I need to make sure she's safe first. Just remember the address, okay?" Sunday evening, Mrs. Chen made dinner for Sophie and me, but I was too terrified to eat anything she'd prepared. What if she knew I'd found David? What if she was planning to poison me too? "You're not eating," she observed, watching me push food around my plate. "I'm not feeling well," I said. "Might be coming down with something." "That's too bad." "Well, I'll be back tomorrow night, so you'll be able to go home and rest soon." After Sophie went to bed, I sat in the living room pretending to study while Mrs. Chen moved around upstairs. Around 11, I heard her go down to the basement again. This time, I crept to the top of the stairs and pressed my ear to the door. Getting suspicious. Her voice drifted up through the wood. Might have to move up our timeline. Accident needs to happen this week. I backed away from the door, my heart pounding. She was planning to K*LL David within the next few days, and she suspected I knew something. I had to act fast. I waited until Mrs. Chen went to her bedroom, then crept upstairs to check on Sophie. She was sleeping peacefully, unaware that her world was about to explode. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "Everything's going to be okay, sweetheart." Then I went back to my room and called 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm babysitting at 1247 Elmwood Drive in Riverside Heights, and there's a man being held captive in the basement. The mother of the child I'm watching has chained him up and is planning to K*LL him. Ma'am, can you repeat that address? I gave them all the details, about finding David in the basement, about Mrs. Chen's lies regarding her whereabouts, about the plans I'd overheard to stage his death. The dispatcher stayed on the line with me, asking questions while units were dispatched. Are you and the child in immediate danger? I think so. The mother suspects I know something, and she's been talking about moving up her timeline. Officers are 3 minutes away. Can you get to the child and barricade yourselves in a room? I crept up to Sophie's room and gently woke her up. Sophie, sweetie, we need to play a hiding game. Some police officers are coming to help us, but we need to stay very quiet until they get here. She rubbed her sleepy eyes. Is Mommy in trouble? Before I could answer, we heard Mrs. Chen's bedroom door open. Heavy footsteps moved down the hallway towards Sophie's room. Madison. Mrs. Chen's voice was sing-song sweet, but there was something terrifying underneath it. I need to speak with you. I grabbed Sophie and pulled her into the walk-in closet, locking the door behind us. Through the thin wood, we could hear Mrs. Chen enter the bedroom. Madison, I know you're in there. And I know what you found in my basement. Sophie looked at me with confusion and fear. I put my finger to my lips and held her close. You see, Madison, my husband David is a very sick man. He was abusing Sophie and me, so I had to protect my family. Everything I did was in self-defense. The closet doorknob rattled as Mrs. Chen tried to open it. But you couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? You had to go snooping around where you didn't belong. Through my phone, I could hear the 911 dispatcher saying that officers had arrived and were surrounding the house. Red and blue lights began flashing through the closet keyhole. Police. This is the police. The voices came from downstairs, followed by the sound of the front door being kicked open. Mrs. Chen's footsteps quickly retreated from Sophie's room. Sophie was crying now, finally understanding that something terrible was happening. It's okay, I whispered, hugging her tight. The police are here. They're going to help us. We stayed in the closet until an officer called up the stairs. Madison? Sophie. This is Officer Rodriguez. You're safe now. Mrs. Chen is in custody. When we finally emerged from the closet, the house was full of police officers and paramedics. Mrs. Chen was being led out in handcuffs, screaming that I'd ruined everything and that David deserved what happened to him. Sophie clung to my leg, sobbing as she watched her mother being arrested. I knelt down and pulled her into my arms, trying to shield her from the chaos around us. 2 paramedics were bringing David up from the basement on a stretcher. He was conscious but weak, and when he saw Sophie, tears started streaming down his face. Daddy! Sophie whispered, not understanding how her father could be here when he was supposed to be traveling. The investigation revealed the full scope of Mrs. Chen's plan. She'd been having an affair with David's business partner and had been embezzling money from David's company. When David discovered both the affair and the theft, she'd get him and staged his disappearance. For 8 months, she'd kept him chained in the basement while collecting his paychecks and maintaining the fiction that he was traveling for work. She'd been slowly poisoning him with small amounts of rat poison in his food, planning to eventually discover his body and claim he died in an accident during his fake business trip. The insurance payout would have been substantial, and with David gone, there'd be no one to expose her embezzlement or her affair. David spent 3 weeks in the hospital recovering from malnutrition and poisoning, but he made a full recovery. Sophie went to stay with her paternal grandparents while her father healed and the legal proceedings played out. Mrs. Chen was charged with kidnapping, attempted murder, embezzlement, and child endangerment. She was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 25 years to life. During the trial, more details emerged about her psychological state. She'd been planning David's murder for over a year, carefully researching poisons and accident scenarios. The basement had been converted into a prison cell months before she'd actually carried out her plan. Sophie started therapy to help her process the trauma of learning that her mother was a would-be murderer who'd kept her father prisoner in their own home. It took months for her to understand that none of it was her fault, that she couldn't have known what was happening below her feet every night. I also started therapy to deal with the nightmares and panic attacks that followed the incident. For weeks, I couldn't sleep without checking and rechecking locks, and I jumped every time I heard unexpected noises. The worst part was the guilt. Guilt over not acting sooner, guilt over putting Sophie in danger by staying in the house, guilt over the years of trauma that little girl would carry because I'd been too scared to trust my instincts immediately. But my therapist helped me understand that I'd done the right thing in the end. I'd saved David's life and protected Sophie from witnessing her father's murder. The guilt was normal but misplaced. I was a victim too, manipulated by a master manipulator who'd been planning these crimes for months. David sent me a card when he finally came home from the hospital. "Thank you for saving my life and protecting my daughter. Your courage gave me a second chance at being Sophie's father." 6 months later, I received an invitation to Sophie's 8th birthday party. David had full custody now, and they'd moved to a new house across town, a bright, airy place with no basement, no locked doors, and no dark secrets hidden in the foundation. At the party, Sophie ran up to me with a huge smile and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Madison, thank you for playing the hiding game with me and making sure the police found Daddy." Children have an amazing ability to reframe trauma in ways that help them cope. To Sophie, that terrifying night had become the hiding game, where I'd kept her safe until the police could rescue her father. David pulled me aside during the party and told me how Sophie was doing in therapy. She still had nightmares sometimes, and she asked a lot of questions about why her mommy had done such terrible things. But she was resilient, surrounded by love and support, and slowly healing from wounds no 7-year-old should ever have to bear. "She talks about you all the time," David said. "You're her hero. The babysitter who saved her family." I still babysit, though I'm much more careful about the jobs I take. I trust my instincts now when something feels off. I ask more questions about family dynamics and living situations. And I always listen when children tell me something seems wrong in their home. The experience taught me that evil often hides behind ordinary facades. Mrs. Chen seemed like a typical suburban mom, concerned about her daughter, polite to service providers, active in her community. But underneath that veneer, she was capable of unspeakable cruelty toward the people who should have been able to trust her most. It also taught me the importance of speaking up when you witness injustice, even when you're scared, even when you're not sure, even when it's easier to look the other way. David would have died if I'd convinced myself that those sounds were just old pipes. Sophie would have grown up believing her father had abandoned her, never knowing he'd actually died trying to protect her from her mother. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been a different kind of babysitter, someone less observant, less willing to listen to a child's concerns, less brave when it mattered most. The thought keeps me awake some nights, imagining all the ways that weekend could have ended differently. But most of the time, I focus on the positive outcome. A little girl got her father back. A man was saved from a horrific death. A monster was stopped before she could complete her evil plan. And I learned that sometimes the most ordinary-looking job can turn into the most extraordinary test of your character. I thought babysitting would be easy, just keeping a child safe for a few days while earning some money for college. I had no idea it would become a life-or-death situation that would test every ounce of courage I possessed. But I'm glad it happened, because it showed me what I'm capable of when someone I care about is in danger. It proved that even when I'm terrified, even when I don't know what I'm doing, I can still do the right thing when it matters most. Sophie is 9 now, and she still sends me drawings she makes in art therapy. They're getting brighter and happier, filled with rainbows and flowers instead of the dark, frightening images she drew right after that night. Her healing gives me hope that children can overcome even the most traumatic experiences when they're surrounded by love and support. David is dating someone new now, a kind woman who works as a child psychologist and understands the complexities of Sophie's situation. They're taking things slowly, making sure Sophie feels comfortable with each step of their relationship. As for me, I finished community college and transferred to a 4-year university to study criminal justice. That weekend in the Chan house changed my career goals completely. I want to work with families in crisis, to help children who are trapped in dangerous situations, to be the voice for victims who can't speak up for themselves. I thought babysitting would be easy money for a college student. Instead, it became the defining experience that showed me my life's purpose. Sometimes the worst situations can lead to the most important revelations about who we're meant to become. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you for witnessing how one weekend of babysitting turned into a fight for survival and justice. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between your safety and doing what was right? Sometimes the jobs we think will be the easiest turn out to be the most important tests of our character. Thanks for listening. Take care.